Jumatatu mpaka Ijumaa, moja kwa moja kutoka VOA Swahili.
Hello, I'm Linor Moudou. Welcome to Africa 54. Here is what's coming up. Tragic images circulating on social media are fueling mutual animosity between Palestinians and Israelis as fighting rages on in Gaza. Examining U.S.-Africa policy as a string of military coups on the continent challenge civilian-led democratic governance. And Africa celebrates 50 global changemakers at an African Youth Summit in South Africa. All that and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. The United Nations General Assembly is holding an emergency special session on Thursday on the Israel-Palestine conflict amid a continuing deadlock at the Security Council and conditions in the besieged enclave of Gaza growing more dire by the hour. Riyad Mansour, permanent observer of the State of Palestine, told the Assembly that, citing personal accounts of life on the ground, humanitarian aid is badly needed. He said hospitals are operating without anesthesia, with doctors and patients alike wondering if help is on the way. Gilad Erdan, ambassador of permanent representative of Israel to the UN, said that the 7 October massacre and what ensued, quote, has nothing to do with the Palestinians, the Arab-Israeli conflict, or the Palestinian question. He went on to note that Hamas does not care about Palestinian people, peace, or dialogue. Thursday's session followed failures for unity at the United Nations Council last week. A Russian-led draft resolution calling for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire was voted down last Monday, and the following Wednesday, the U.S. vetoed a Brazilian-led text that urged humanitarian pauses to deliver aid to millions in the Gaza Strip. In the war-torn Gaza Strip, fighting raged for Thursday. The Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry said on that more than 7,000 Palestinians had been killed in the airstrikes. However, the figure has not been independently verified. The Israeli military said troops entered Gaza with tanks and infantry in an overnight targeted raid, striking numerous terrorist cells, infrastructure, and anti-tank missile launch posts before retreating to home soil. The United Nations warned Thursday that nowhere is safe in Gaza as Israel stepped up its bombardments in preparation for a widely expected ground offensive. The UN says 12 of the territory's 35 hospitals have now closed due to damage or insufficient fuel, and its main UN agency for Palestinian refugees said it began to significantly reduce its operations. Tragic images from both sides of the Gaza conflict circulating on Palestinian and Israeli social media are fueling mutual hatred that is becoming more ingrained as the conflict deepens. Jan Bochat spoke with both sides in Israel and the Palestinian territories. Marcus Harton narrates.
The violence has been nonstop as Israeli warplanes bomb Gaza, while Hamas continues to fire rockets into Israel. West Bank protests broke out after last Friday's prayers, and confrontations between Israeli forces and Palestinians left several dead. For the first time in almost 20 years, Israeli jets attacked a West Bank town. On the border with Lebanon, violence is also escalating, raising concerns on both sides that a new war between Israel and Hezbollah might be about to begin. On social media, graphic scenes of violence are everywhere, available to everyone. The Israeli government posted video that purports to show body cam footage of a Hamas militant shooting at a civilian vehicle and a dash cam video from inside the car. VOA could not independently confirm the authenticity of the video. The unfiltered and sometimes false information fuels mutual hatred that is becoming more intense and ingrained in people on both sides of this conflict.
These children you see, these quadruplets, their parents waited 16 years to have them. Now they are killed. What did these kids do to Israel?
Nadush Mohammed lives far from Gaza in a comfortable house in Ramallah. She says she would prefer to be dead than watch what is coming to her phone every day. After seeing it, she says, it's impossible to even think about living in peace with an Israeli.
We are different from them. We saw the treatment of Hamas towards children and the treatment of Israel. What they said about the burning of children is not true. Hamas treats its hostages very well.
She refers to a video she saw released by the militant group Hamas, claiming it is taking good care of Israeli children it is holding hostage. The content of that video is unverified. For several days, Ramallah's streets have been full of people protesting the Israeli attacks on Gaza. In Israeli communities close to the Gaza border, life has all but stopped. In Ashkelon, the biggest city near Gaza, few go out into the streets. The sirens don't go off as often as they used to at the beginning of the war, but rockets keep coming from Gaza, aimed at them. In this once bustling marina, only a few people came for a stroll on a sunny afternoon. After several days at home, Yana decided to come out for a walk with her boyfriend Nikolai. Their realities are quite different from those of Nadush, but they strangely seem connected by the hatred they express.
They showed
videos of the soldiers who are kidnapped, of children who were pulled from vehicles. They raped girls in the squares in Gaza. I don't think there's a difference between them. They are the same.
Yana, like Nadush, doesn't think it will ever be possible for Israelis and Palestinians to coexist after this.
You cannot live with them in peace. In the end, they will kill us because they are taught in school that we are their enemies.
Yana refers to videos she has seen on social media that claim to show Palestinian schools teaching children to view Israelis as their enemies. That content is also unverified. Israelis and Palestinians have both grown up in a culture of mutual hatred and distrust. Many on both sides of this tragedy see death and destruction more than ever as the only solution. For Jan Boshat in Jerusalem, Marcus Harden, VOA News.
For more on the conflict, let's go to VOA correspondent Jan Boshat, who is standing by in East Jerusalem. Jan, Israeli tanks and troops raided the Palestinian enclave overnight. Describe for us what the current situation is.
This was the first time that the Israelis entered Gaza with armored vehicles in this war. A few weeks ago, some soldiers, like special units, entered the enclave and trying to find out what's going on there. What is the best place for this possibly ground invasion? At this time, they did the same, and the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu just said this is the preparation for the next stage, meaning that ground invasion might be ahead in the next days or weeks, but nothing is clear so far.
So as you mentioned, Prime Minister Netanyahu said this is a preparation. What could be expected in the coming weeks?
I think there's a lot of questions to be answered. What is going to happen if Israel invades Gaza? What will be the reaction of Hezbollah? What will be the reaction of Iran? What is going to happen in the West Bank? A lot of people here, I would say everybody here, is thinking about this, the consequences of this ground invasion. it's not clear so far what's going to happen. And you talk to everyone, and everyone just say, we don't know what's going to happen in the near future.
So tell us about the impact on civilians who are inside Gaza, and how do they view the days ahead?
Well, it was just another tragic day for people in Gaza. As you said, the death toll climbed to more than 7,000 people. More than 15,000 people are wounded. Hundreds of thousands are displaced. And the situation is just getting worse. UN said that the humanitarian crisis is reaching a catastrophic level. The fuel, as you mentioned before, it's not coming into Gaza, and then the generators cannot operate, and a lot of hospitals are stopping to work. I guess a lot of people in Gaza, I have friends in Gaza that I talk to, they say they're just waiting for the worst to happen. They're losing their hope.
Ian, thank you so much for joining us. That was VOA correspondent Ian Bochat reporting from East Jerusalem. Now, Africa's continuous military coups pose a direct challenge to civilian-led democratic governance in the continent. Analysts believe these coups reflect the African military's desire to reclaim their perceived entitlement to the ruling. Paul Ndiho has more.
It is the end of the road for us. That is what the opposition parties said as they filed out of the courtroom just behind me. Here today, the Supreme Court, Nigeria's highest legal institution, delivered its judgment on opposition challenges to President Bola Tinubu's February election victory. The court upheld Tinubu's win, dismissing the latest application by the People's Democratic Party to introduce new evidences to support claims that the president forged the diploma's certificate he presented to the Electoral Commission. Certificate forgery can lead to disqualification of a candidate, but the court said opposition did not present its case sooner until they were defeated at the lower appeals court last month. The court also said new evidences can only be admitted if applicants can prove that they can significantly sway the outcome of the election.
We came here because we are law-abiding. We came here because we love our country. We came here because we want to set, the right direction for Nigeria. And they have, in their wisdom, decided what is judgment. But for us, this is not justice. It's not justice because Nigerians were expecting that this court would do the right thing. You can see the mood even within the court here, that people are like mourning. If judgment was given, this place would have erupted in jubilation. We are all Nigerians, and we all know what happened on the 25th of February.
The Supreme Court also struck out a suit challenging the manual transmission of election results, saying the electoral body is at liberty to choose how to transmit votes. Opposition had alleged that manual vote transmission gave rise to manipulations of votes. The court also dismissed suits about the president's alleged criminal forfeiture of $460,000 to the U.S. authorities. In September, the appeals court dismissed opposition's petitions against the president after months of hearing. Opposition parties have expressed dissatisfaction with the Supreme Court ruling, but the ruling party and its supporters welcome the judgment.
Election petition is a special case of its own, so once you are filing the petition, you have to do it within the time limited by law, that's 21 days. If you cannot bring all your documents within that day, you are out. The court cannot grant you any extension to file fresh evidence or fresh documents. That's all.
February's presidential election was the most controversial in Nigeria's recent history. The vote was marred by violence and allegations of deliberate manipulation of votes. On social media, supporters of the opposition parties have been calling for street protests. No one knows what will happen next. Timothy Obiezu, VOA News, Abuja, Nigeria.
That was Timothy Obiezu reporting from Nigeria. Now here is Paul Ndiho.
During a recent Senate Foreign Relations Committee hearing in Washington.
5 nations in the region are suffering coups since 2020. This includes Mali, Guinea, Burkina Faso, Chad, and most recently, Niger. Mali and Burkina Faso have actually had 2 coups. At the same time, there have been an alarming increase in terrorist attacks by militant Islamist organizations.
The West African Regional Bloc, ECOWAS, is facing significant challenges in dealing with the rise of coups in the region, as highlighted by Moses Kihisa, an associate professor of political science and Africana studies at North Carolina State University.
One of the things that the African Union has been doing, for which it deserves credit, is that every time there is a coup, every time there is an unconstitutional change of government using force, the African Union promptly suspends that country from its membership to the body.
The Sahel region has experienced a rise in jihad insurgency affiliated with Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State group. These militant Islamist threats are spreading across Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, and Chad.
But it's important for the United States to take a principled stance when coups occur. We need to lead with our values as we try to advance an agenda of good governance in the region. I think we need to make our position crystal clear. Military takeovers of civilian-led governments are coups.
Some analysts say these coups are increasing the risks of insecurity and political instability. In Mali, jihadist militants are once again targeting Timbuktu. However, unlike a decade ago, when French and US troops halted the insurgent advance, Mali's military junta has limited options for support. The US and France suspended aid and military assistance and training in response to the coups. A surge in insurgent attacks in Mali and Burkina Faso has been attributed to the expulsion of French troops by military rulers in those countries. Paul Ndiho, VOA News, Washington.
Still to come, celebrating Africa's young global changemakers.
Cervical cancer is one of the most successfully preventable and, if diagnosed early, one of the most treatable forms of cancer. But according to the World Health Organization, 70,000 women in Africa die every year due to cervical cancer. On this week's episode of Our Voices, we will discuss what cervical cancer is. We will also hear from experts on ways to ensure increased medical access for timely detection, care, and prevention. Join the conversation each week right here on Our Voices.
In other news, Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch on Thursday called on Niger's military rulers to release all those they said arbitrarily detained in the country and to allow a free press to operate. Amnesty and Human Rights Watch said since the July coup that toppled President Mohamed Bazoum has been held in the presidential residence with his wife and son. Several ministers of the deposed government are also detained. The Sudanese Armed Forces and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces delegations are in Saudi Arabia's port city Jeddah to resume a new round of negotiations. The SAF said in a statement that the negotiation is one of the means that may end the war and hopefully complete the full implementation of the Jeddah Declaration and facilitate the humanitarian work and the return of citizens and normal life. Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said on Thursday he will not invade any nation. His comments are aimed at quelling neighboring countries' concerns that he might use force to secure access to a seaport. Abiy told state media on October 13th that Ethiopia should assert what he called the landlocked nation's right to access the Red Sea as much as possible through peaceful means. In Nigeria, finding solutions to the growing trend of out-of-school children has become a national emergency. An estimated 20 million children are not attending school, a situation that experts blame on a mix of cultural, economic, and infrastructure problems, none of which have easy solutions. Gibson Emeka has this story from Abuja.
Joshua Gideon head a public elementary school in Arasabo community in north-central Nigeria. Why children here want to learn, he says many cannot afford books or other school supply. Not having these children in school, Gideon said, is a recipe for national crisis.
The basic education which is necessary for an individual to become something in the future, that foundation is not being given to them, then definitely they will mess up in the community.
The number of children hawking or begging for alms in the streets of Nigeria are like the epic challenge. While primary education is officially free and compulsory in Nigeria, the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, estimated last year that about 20 million children aged 5 to 14 are not in school. Gideon says one problem is a simple lack of schools.
We don't have enough chairs for these children to be able to settle and read well. Conducive environment is not there. We need like all these buildings. You can see our buildings are already dilapidated.
Another educator, James Rotimi, says cultural and economic factors are also keeping children out of classroom.
There are places where girls are not supposed to go to school, or girls are supposed to be early marriage and child marriage in some places. In other places, conflict, like where you have the Boko Haram crisis, people are displaced. We have economic factors too. A lot of people have to go and work early in life to help and support the family.
The Nigeria Government Universal Basic Education Commission has said the nation needs to build 20,000 new schools with nearly 1 million classrooms to accommodate out-of-school children. Rotimi believes the government target is a tall ambition.
Where we are today, it's a bit difficult to say we want to achieve that. If you look at the allocation that education gets across the years, in 2016, only 9 trillion naira was allocated to education. That's about 8.4 billion of the national budget, 8.4% of the national budget. But as of 2022, the allocation to education has dropped to 5.4%.
With 42% of Nigeria's current population below age 15, Rotimi says the country needs to find alternative funding channels to ramp up investment in basic education.
There should be an intentional move to bring in private sector to invest in the education system. And there should be incentives like tax relief for intervening in education, in the education sector for private sector. That is a key and important move. Then the communities too can be involved.
On paper, Nigeria has strong education policy, but education experts says implementation of this policy has been slow and uneven, and are urging action so children get in schools. Gibson Emeka, VOA News, Abuja, Nigeria.
As the world seeks a strong leadership to find solutions to its many social, political, and economic crises, Africa is celebrating 50 young individuals who are making a difference on the continent. They have been named global change makers at an African Youth Summit in Rawsonville, South Africa. Vicky Stark was there and filed this report.
How can we juxtapose?
These young men and women have been recognized for having a big positive impact on their communities. And organizers of the African Youth Summit say they hope the youths will return home to inspire others to do the same. Gabriela Yeager, who co-founded the Global Changemakers organization, says about 1,250 young people have been selected since the organization was launched 15 years ago. They are given training, mentorship, networking opportunities and funding.
Personally, I believe that the grassroots work these young people are doing is immensely important, not only in terms of the results that the project itself is having, but also to show other young people that it's important to become active, that they can have an impact in their communities.
Lucanio Sonyamba of South Africa is one of the new global changemakers, selected from almost 5,000 entrants. Already an advisor to his government's Children's Commissioner, Sonyamba is hoping this new distinction will further his mission to help young people bridge intergenerational challenges in the workplace.
There's many instances where I've actually had to speak with my other co-workers and try to find that middle ground where we actually come to a consensus like, okay, I know that I'm younger than you and you're older than me and you've been doing this quite for a long time. But when you're wrong, I will address you in this manner, respectfully, and when I'm wrong, address me respectfully.
Becoming a global changemaker in 2016 has made a massive difference to nutrition advocate Maureen Mukhetha of Kenya, who's at the summit as a facilitator. She founded Tule Vyema, which is Swahili for Let's Eat Right. It encourages young women to cultivate indigenous gardens for their household consumption and sell the surplus. So far, Mukhetha has reached 900 households.
Global Changemakers has equipped me with the necessary skills in terms of how to do fundraising, but also how to do proposal writing.
For the first time this year, Atia Kafia, an organization in South Africa that traditionally promotes the Afrikaans language and culture, partnered with Global Changemakers. Atia Kafia's managing director, Sanal Britt, says they hosted the summit at one of their holiday resorts called Houdini Spa and will provide funding for some of the projects of the South African participants. Britt says during the four-day summit from October 17th to 20th, the new global changemakers learned skills and listened to panel discussions and lectures on a range of topics including tech, politics and finance.
What happens for them after this is that they have the opportunity to actually write business plans, to submit their proposals and to obtain possible funding to implement all of these projects in their communities. Obviously, when you have funding coming in, you also have a responsibility to report back, and we look forward to the results that they will achieve.
Global Changemakers is looking for partners to host next year's summit in Mexico for Latin America and the Latin community in North America. It will be hosted in Spanish for the first time. Vicky Stark, VOA News, Cape Town, South Africa.
Congratulations to them. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.